Welcome to another tutorial of Post My Contact Form 7 plugin extension. It's a plugin that allows you to save forms to form submission to a given post, existing post in the backend, or a custom post type, whereby each field of a given form can be mapped to individual post fields. And therefore, whenever a submission is made from that given form by a user, a post is created in the backend, saving the submissions. If you have not followed any of the previous tutorials on as to how to actually map a form to a post, I invite you to click on the link here to see the previous tutorials on this plugin. In this tutorial, I'm going to cover the ability to actually save a draft submission. The idea of a draft submission is that each of these fields can be partially saved, so as to be able to enable the user to come back at a later date and complete the form and submit it. So the post in the backend is mapped to an existing post with the post title, the post content, the description, and the thumbnail. And the Post My Contact Form 7 extension plugin creates a save button as opposed to a submit button, whereby when the user clicks the save button, a draft form is saved as a draft post in the backend, and this draft post is then automatically reloaded into the form whenever that user logs back in and loads again the page with the corresponding form. So obviously this by default the plugin expects a user to be logged in and in order to load an existing draft post. And what it will do is it will flag that draft post as being partially submitted, as being in a draft mode, as being in a draft submission, and therefore whenever the user logs back in and loads the page with the given form, so loads this given page, what will happen is that the plugin will automatically seek in the database an existing post with that user's author of the post, and as well look out for that special flag that says that is there any partially submitted form in the backend. In other words, when the user actually submits the form rather than just pressing the save button, the flag changes to being submitted and is no longer being flagged as being a draft submission, so much so that when the user then reloads the page, he will not be able to see his existing post anymore, but will be presented with a blank form whereby he can then start again by filling in the form, should they wish to. So how do we go about doing this? So first of all, we need to actually add our save button over here. So what we're going to do is we're going to create, this has got an offset, so let's remove the offset here. Let's add an extra column, which is this one here, and here we're going to add our save button, save draft, let's say. And now what we're going to do is we're gonna, ideally we want the save button to be on the right side, so let's just drag this across and swap these two columns out. And now let's update our form. And if I reload now, we have the save draft button over here. Now what we want to do is maybe adjust the heights of these. So what do we have here? Target for this declaration here. Right. And now we have an alignment with the bottom thumbnail as well. So we need to save these in our custom CSS. And the smart grid layout allows us to build custom CSS. Oh, that was already there. Why didn't it load it? Let's update this. And let's reload this, refresh. Yeah, so that still works. So how does this work? So we're going to ensure that our form to post is now live instead of being draft. Let's update this, because obviously if it's in draft we cannot actually save. The plugin will not save anything in the backend. And let's say this was my first post, a short post on how to save draft forms. This is a story about saving draft forms, which I will complete at a later date. There we go. So let me say that now that I've run out of inspiration and I wanted to actually come back to this post, to this creative writing at a later date. Saving draft form. And instead of submitting, I'm now going to save this as a draft. And note, I've not actually submitted any thumbnails. Saved is disabled, form is not mapped. Okay, so one of the reasons why this is happening is, even though I had actually submitted, I've actually put my form as live, is that when this form is being loaded, there is a flag saying that currently the form is not, when I initially loaded this page, I had not set it to live. It was still in draft mode, and therefore you get this little error message saying that you cannot save the draft because it's still, the form is still not mapped, it's still in draft mode. So what I need to overcome this is simply reload this. Okay, and now that should work. Simple post. Just cut and paste what I'd written before. Now I save the draft, and now you see it actually saved the draft. And you get this message saying a draft of this form has been saved. You may complete and submit the form at a later time. And basically what happened is that there is actually no validation taking place on a form that is being submitted with this the save button. So the save button actually makes a submission in the back end, but it's a different kind of submission from the submit button, obviously. And as you can see, I did not post any thumbnail, which is still a required field. So now if I was to actually try and submit this this form, you can see here it actually validates the form and says that this field is required and therefore it's missing. Okay, and if we go look into the back end, you can see here the simple post has been saved, and we should have the excerpts. Let's see what the excerpt looks like. And here's the excerpt as well, which is what was entered in the form. And so this is being saved in the back end, and I should be the author of this. Where is the author field? Yes, and you see my name here, my user ID is being saved as the author. However, if we look here, so you see this is the flag here. CF7 to post is submitted or not. This is unchecked. For a post that actually been submitted, I don't have any. Maybe this one. Get it? Yeah. So you see here, this was another post I'd submitted on a different tutorial. And what happened is that this flag here, CF7 to post, is checked. And basically what it says here is that you need to uncheck this to reload the post in the form. And this flag is basically a flag telling you whether or not a post is submitted in a draft submission or in an actual submission. If it's been submitted, it's checked, and therefore the user that revisits the page will see a blank form that time. But if you were to uncheck this and revisit the post of this form that submitted this post, it would actually reload this post with this title into the form. So here, for example, this is unchecked, and that's because currently this form is has been submitted as a draft mode. Now let's see if I was to refresh this. We refresh this page now and see that the form is completely empty. And if I was to actually inspect this and look at the hidden fields of this form, you see that the post ID is no longer being loaded into the form. The hidden field, the post ID, is no longer being loaded in the form, and that's basically because in the back end, if I was to look at our posts, although this form is now being submitted, the submitted form here, the form is being submitted, is now checked, and that actually confirms that the flag in the plugin for this particular post has been flagged as being submitted and not being in a draft mode anywhere. Should I submit the form? In other words, flag this as being in a draft mode, and I should actually publish the form to save it. You see, I've actually unsubmitted flagged it as being unsubmitted, and now I was to go back into the page, and I was to reload this page. Now you see it is reloading the same post which I'd filled in earlier and I'd submitted earlier, simply because here, hidden fields, and now you see it has reinserted the post ID as being 535, and that's because that form has been flagged as being in a draft mode. And notice as well that the thumbnail is not being reloaded in this form, and that's simply because there's no current mechanism to reload an uploaded file into a form. So this is something that in a draft, if a user had saved a draft thumbnail, they would need to actually resubmit that thumbnail. So here I could go and select my previous image. I could save it as draft, and with this current message, if I reload the form, you see the thumbnail is still not being loaded. And if I look at the form, this is still unchecked. Now let's see if I was to actually submit this form. Let's reload the thumbnail, re-upload the thumbnail, submit. The form has now been submitted. If I was to refresh this form, you can see that it is totally empty. The form is not being reloaded. And if I was to refresh this table and look at the flag, it's now been flagged as being submitted. So I hope you understand the ability for this plugin to save draft forms, and that is simply being done by actually adding a save button, and the plugin is smart enough to figure out when a form has been submitted and when it has been saved as a draft. And of course you have the control over the ability to actually unsubmit a draft form should you want a user to maybe make some addition to the submission of that post. You could unflag it from submitted to unsubmitted, and whenever the user would revisit this page, they would actually see their post being loaded again. Thank you.